Hello and welcome to the Think Bamboo podcast, the show where we unpack the personal and professional, easy for me to say, professional growth journeys from some of the most interesting minds in marketing and business. And today we have none other than Yvonne Balfour. Yvonne, for those that are unfamiliar with yourself, care to give a little introduction to yourself better than I just did?
Thank you. So Yvonne Balfour. So I am a marketeer. I started my career in agencies, in client
Mm-hmm.
management, and then went on to help grow and eventually own a marketing consultancy through a management buyout. And then following kind of growth onto sale to a larger group. After coming out of that, I then moved into the corporate world at Sainsbury's Bank, where I led roles across customer insight, CRM, marketing transformation, and then to today, where I'm at Ultimate Finance as Chief Marketing Officer, focused on marketing strategy, but also business transformation to support the growth ambitions of what we are, which is a specialist asset-based lender. My other role in life is I am a wife and mum of two adult boys, two Labradors, always juggling family and career, hopefully over 20 plus years in balance, but maybe not always.
Lovely. Well, that was an excellent intro. Much better than I did. We're going to leave that in, by the way. If you thought, would he start again? Absolutely not. That is the whole essence of this podcast here, where you go for it, life's peaks and troughs, all the growth journey there. So you mentioned there at the beginning that you started off in agency land's the term I use for it, and then moved over client side, had a few roles there in between. So I'm checking my notes here to make sure I've got this right. So was it Navigator and Tangible, where you began? And you've had quite a long career, as you said so far, so 20 plus years. Many different hats, many different roles, lots of turns, I would say, across your career that I want to get into. What is it about agency land that the lessons that you took from those initial early days that have stayed with you to your current role as a CMO of a very respected finance firm? Is there anything you've been able to take from those early days that still stick with you today?
Yeah. I think one of the key things in client management, in particular in agencies, you're a business manager. You know, you think you're going to get into marketing and be creative and have ideas and do all of that. And yes, there is some of that, but actually you are a business and a project manager, and you are kind of shaping that whole kind of agency culture. You're shaping kind of how you work with clients, and it's all on the essence of being really good with people and building trust and taking
Mm,
people on the journey with you. So actually, you know, when you step back and go, actually, you apply that in any circumstance, that is kind of the core role when you're in client management and an agency. So you're as much a salesperson as you are as a project manager, as you are at guiding and steering and aligning people and making sure everybody's on the same page and the same deadline and the same budget and focused on delivery. And I think, you know, if anything, that's what being in an agency taught me. And you're on the sharp edge, right? Because you've got to deliver the billings. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And actually
hmm
taking that into the corporate world, you know, I didn't leave any of that behind. In fact, what made me stand out and would be different going into something like Sainsbury's Bank is you take that with you.
Right.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
actually, you zero in on what are we trying to do here? What are we trying to deliver? Let's really kind of get on board with that and focus in on it.
So I agree with that there because I've spent more time now or probably about 50-50 with Think Bamboo as well. But prior to that, I was definitely more client side than I was agency side. But started off very similar to you in the agency part. And what I found, what I found to be different across agency and the client side was, especially within the agency, was you have to deliver. And like no criticism for the businesses I've been at. Sometimes it's a slower pace, and that you have got that room to breathe, which is welcomed. In that case, within agency, it was you're here to deliver, and you've got to. There isn't the margin for error is so small, but depending on the relationships and all that stuff, the wiggle room you can have that determined. However, with that in mind, when you brought that to another firm, there that can sometimes be like, whoa, person's intense or they don't want to do it because, like Gary's been here for like 35 years and he's like, they're coasting and that's how they got on, and to have that injection of energy can sometimes be a nice part. Now, again, you mentioned something that I've not spoken to anybody else on the podcast yet about, which makes you completely unique so far. We don't know where to get to 40, 50 episodes in. Now, you're saying you managed a buyout from there and to own your agency. Now, I might be speaking out of turn here. That sounds like a very stressful task to undertake, and the turns in the journey that'll put you on. What did you learn about yourself during that buyout that you didn't know before, and the lessons that you've taken forward with you either in your personal life or your professional life?
Yeah. So, so as you say, kind of, was it a stressful time of going through the buyout? Thankfully, our then managing director and CFO were the ones at the sharp end dealing with the lawyers and the everything
Yeah.
else. And the rest of us were keeping the lights on and keeping business rolling at the agency while some of that was going on. But I think it's a switch in the way that you think.
Okay.
Because although we felt we were running our agency, we were part of a group. We were the direct marketing, which was the new thing at the time,
Mm-hmm.
agency. So there was a traditional advertising agency, there was design, and then there was us as the direct marketing agency. And it was a simultaneous buyout of all three to pay. The founder wanted to exit from the
Mm-hmm.
original agency. And so although we felt autonomous and we're running our agency, we were part of this group and there was a certain level of comfort. The switch comes when actually you've got the keys, your names are on the company's house as directors and
Yeah.
responsible, and you understand what that brings with it. Um, that's the switch in your mind of going, okay, we actually are sailing this ship and we are responsible for all these people around us and the buck stops with us. Whereas previously you could kind of go, can maybe pass some of those challenges
Yeah.
down the line,
Yep.
some of those gritty things that client doesn't want to pay for that campaign, or, there's a bit of an issue here or things like that. You've got a degree of responsibility, but not. But when you're sitting there and the buck stops with you and you've got 40 staff
Mm-hmm.
and bills to pay, I think that's the key switch that definitely kind of kicked in for all of us.
Mm-hmm. And what did you have to talk about yourself personally here? Was there anything that you had to change? Like, okay, so that switch changed. In terms of anything about like the behaviors that you like, was there anything that needed to change from you? Or was it dial up something that you were already doing, but maybe it was set to 40% and now it's like, actually I need this dialed right up to 80, 90.
Yeah, yeah. Focus, taking everybody on the journey with you, being a different person. There'll be people in the past that knew me was sometimes a bit too driven, leaving people behind. And I think actually you realize you've got to put your arms around everybody, all
Right.
of the
Okay.
time, and probably dial back some of your driven aspect to make sure everybody's keeping up with you. And take them with you and make them understand, kind of, working with them so they understand why you're doing some of the things you're doing and getting
Yep.
on
Yep.
board
Yep.
with that. So that collaboration and people buying into the vision and into your journey was probably me slow down, temper a little bit, and let everybody join you and catch up.
That is so that's such an important point, and that's something that I've had to learn myself. Because right now, but prior to that, I would only be convincing like the rest of the marketing team or like some of the C-suite here. This is what we've got to do. But touch wood, I was relatively successful with that. Try to base 90% of what I do on data, so that it's no longer subjective, and also it removes like no, they don't like my idea. I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter if it's my idea. It's about what does the data say, and then we can do that there and all the rest of that. And then when I'm trying to get, it feels different when you've got trying to get buy-in from the rest of a team. I mean, talking to everyone else that think Bambu there, but sometimes they just go, yep, sure, whatever you say, Jamie. And it's like, okay, cool, let's do that. But I'm also thinking, no, I genuinely need you to believe in like this vision and going with that there. So what do I need to do? Let's show the data here, but then also like show a bit of passion, because it's the obvious phrase here about people buy from people. But I realized from myself, I needed to inject a little bit more of me into it,
Yeah.
rather than being, I was being a bit more of a, I was very happy to be a passenger on the side and just go, yep, the numbers say that. Okay, they're going that direction. No skin off my teeth. Totally fine. Now I believe like, oh no, they've got to see that I believe in it, talk with passion, or else I don't get that buy-in. And I've seen a little bit more success from that there. So that was where I had to change a little bit by myself. Now, again, with that selling, and now the buck stops with you, as you say. I find with others that I've spoken to that have moved from that employee to employer role, that there, as you say, that there's a shift in there. And I'd love to know about how, for you, that shift of how you felt about your identity going to, as a to an owner. What did that what did that change within you? How was that to, again, those energies that you needed to dial up? Is there anything there that you realized, oh, I didn't know that about myself before? Or is this something that I did know, but I've had to change it? Was the perception of yourself different? Like, talk to me about that transition there that you made from employee to employer.
So, so personally, I was all on board with doing the management buyout and totally up for it. So, there was for me, a great deal of like career progression. I've always been very career focused. So personally, I was totally up for it. Right. And it's like, yeah, give us the reins because we're going great places, great guns, and we can absolutely, kind of do what we want to do now and have free reign for that. Um, so that was one thing personally for me. The other bit was, as I say, that responsibility. You've now got, as I used to call it, like a lot of mouths to feed, right? You've got all
Mhm,
of these
mhm.
people and their lives are in your hands, literally mortgages, families, whatever that looks like. So we've got to make sure that we remain a really solid, profitable business, that we
Mhm.
keep those jobs, we keep growing, and we're doing all the right things, and we're all, kind of focused. And from that, for me, came, of spending time both developing the culture, but developing the business vision and mission. What's our purpose? So, it's something that you do together, you collaborate on, because then everybody buys into it, and,
Yeah, yeah.
and you're all pulling in the same direction, because there's nothing that unravels something faster, whether it be a project, a business, a team, or whatever, is where people are pulling in different directions and creating that tension or undermining where you're trying to get to.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I think, kind of the other bit of it was, we were funded through invoice finance, brings me full circle to ultimate finance.
Hey!
And
R
so we had, RBS going, right, you said you were going to make these payments, what's happening? Where are we going? And we had a
Yep,
kind of
yep.
timeline that we set out that we wanted to pay back the money, if you like, that
Of course,
we'd
yeah, yeah.
borrowed to do the management buyout. So there was that responsibility to the Royal Bank of Scotland, as was then.
So, you've just touched on something. I know we didn't talk about this beforehand, but I'm often fascinated by people's why, about why they're motivated to do certain things, like why they're going in that direction. I talk about the North Star and the why with Think Bamboo all the time, to say this is why we're doing things. Every time, there shouldn't be any ambiguity. If you don't know by the time I'm finished out this, and I'm going, you haven't been listening. You haven't been. No longer my responsibility. Um, but with your going through, the reason why I'm bringing this up just now is sometimes the why changes. And like,
Mhm.
why am I doing things, from going from agency part to then owning an agency? And we'll get into like this Sainsbury's and all that stuff, and the reasons why we go through there. Can you give a, like, feel free to just openly discuss, 'cause I know we haven't had this, so it's a bit of an open question about, have you ever had any changes to your why? For example, like, okay, I'm at an age said, oh, why? Hey, you've got the opportunity to own this. Why do you want to do this? Hey, you've got the opportunity to maybe remove yourself from this, move off. And what are the drivers for that and what those original whys were?
Um, so if we go like deeply into me,
Yeah.
my why is I love what I do. And when I'm enjoying it, motivated, kind of feel like we're delivering, kind of and, we're not, it's not a charity or anything else. We're not doing good, but actually what we're producing, the work that we're doing is really valued and it's really solid. It's good. It's pleasing people, whatever that looks like. But, for me, it's that fundamental, like I love life and I want to enjoy life and I don't want to feel overly stressed and I don't want to kind of wake up in the morning and hate what I'm doing. So my
Yep. Yep.
why through all of that is that underlining bottom line is my why. So when I've always sort of said, when I get to a point where I kind of go, either my work is done here, I don't feel I can add any more value, or it's going in a direction that I don't want to be part of, or actually there's another new challenge that I want to take on. Then that
Hmm.
has been in my throughout my career. That's my why. That's kind of where things have moved and changed and developed.
That's lovely. I love that. Like lust for life. I've very, very similar where I go at like life's for living. Like let's try and make the most of it. If you're spending your time doing something that I know that's such with the I'm aware of the privilege as that sentence like leaves my lips there about going like we're in a very fortunate position with that acknowledged life is for living. If you're doing something that you hate doing and you're miserable, then what a waste of a life. Try to change it. So without getting too philosophical here, let's go back to you. So you've you've managed this buyout. You're now, owning the agency. That's awesome. You then move to Sainsbury's, and that's quite a transition on its own from owning this agency to moving to a rather well-known bank and an institution on its own, and all the like. I cannot emphasize enough for those who maybe haven't had that transition from going for. So I don't want to say something relatively small because you weren't at something relatively small, but then going to the giant. It's a completely different ball game. It's a completely different transition. It's a different world. It's a different field that you're playing on. How did you manage that transition? And what were any of the similarities that you found? Okay, I can take this with me over in Sainsbury's. What were the differences? And again, what did it teach you? What were the lessons that you took from that?
Yeah. So sort of coming out of the agency, obviously we'd done our buyout, we'd grown the agency, and then we sold it to a group. And I was part of that group through that transition and things. And again, it just felt like it came to a natural end. So I exited and took 6 months. I had two children in amongst doing a management buyout, building the agency, selling it, and everything else. And I was just like, breathe. So I kind of left and had 6 months of just chilling. I did a few bits and pieces for people that I know that said, "Could you come and help us with a project or whatever?"
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that was really just 6 months. Where do I go now? What would I like to do? And I had a conversation with the then marketing director at Sainsbury's Bank, and there was a secret squirrel project they were working on, which was Sainsbury's were going to buy out Lloyd's share because it was a 50-50 partnership of the bank and take
Right.
Sainsbury's Bank wholly owned. And she said, "There's a lot going on. I could really do with some help. Would you come on board on a contract?" I was like,
Hmm.
got nothing else to do. Yeah, why not? That sounds interesting. That sounds like a really good challenge. Love to. And, with that is opportunity. You never know when opportunity knocks, right? Sometimes
Yeah,
say
yeah,
yes. Um, but actually a much loved brand, Sainsbury's, who doesn't love
yeah.
Sainsbury's? But also we've been involved as the agency. We launched Sainsbury's Bank first ever financial product into credit cards going way back. So actually, I had a history with
They
the
knew what they
bank
were doing
and,
there. They knew.
and with
Okay.
Sainsbury's.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started. I went in there to work on the secret squirrel project
Hmm.
at the time, and that was really exciting, which was working with uh, them to shape what does, once in under ownership of Sainsbury's, what does the strategy look like?
And so when you got in there and you're in there now, they've been invited. Okay, it's really good to know, like, a good knowledge there to say, like, okay, you're one of the agencies that were helping them there. Was there any lessons that you could take from running the agency? I'm thinking now for anybody that's listening who is like an SME who has formally, and there's a lot of them that have been an agency side and they're coming out there and now they are working solely as themselves for other companies there. Was there anything that you were able to take from the knowledge that you had as part of the agency and bring that over to Sainsbury's? And again, something that you maybe you did know, maybe you didn't learn anything, but was there anything there you saw about yourself as just Yvonne going in, but without the backing of an institution behind you?
Yeah, and I think it's principles, right? It's maintaining what are the things that have made you, kind of excellent to date, made you your career, made you somebody that people go to for advice, like, from a business perspective. What are the things, what are the skills that you've learned that you can take to an organization like Sainsbury's Bank and within the Sainsbury's Group? So for me, a big part of it was some of those key things, and you learn in an agency is you're really objective. You're generally pretty honest about what good, bad, or, awful looks like within client organizations, and you've been
Yep,
advising
yep.
them and helping them shape that kind of stuff. So actually taking that kind of objective, you're not in the woods and in the weeds yet within the organization, you can see a little bit more objectively and just gently pointing out some of the things that maybe shift, change, could be better, but from within rather than being the paid consultant sitting outside, you're from within. So really importantly there is not going to people and wagging your finger and saying
Yeah,
you
yeah,
could do
yeah.
that better. Through that, what you've learned in an agency is really that collaboration and people bringing people on that journey, and those kind of gentle conversations that in many respects you're making them almost say it for themselves, which is, this is not quite right, or this isn't
Yeah, yeah.
operating the way it could, this could be better. So I think
So
it's that objectivity, all of those skills that you've learned. And it's, again, it comes down to building relationships with people, building their trust, and collaborating.
so when you say about building the trust there, a large part of what I do is building trust with others. And in some cases it is admitting when you don't know things so that they can go, like, you can go, okay, they're not just trying to say that they know everything and they're to come there. But also in some cases, showing that you've got a certain amount of knowledge that okay, we can at least talk on similar terms. Like if you're project managing a web build, you've got to, like, what's the developers, the copywriters, the designers, all this stuff. They've all got their own certain language, and you've got to meet them halfway there and gain the trust that way. Um, Part of my job is also scouring LinkedIn and just seeing what people have said in the past, and say, I go, oh, okay, this is really interesting here. So I've got, just so I don't misquote or get this wrong, I've got all my notes in it with me here. Is a proud moment where you realized you understood risk as well as your risk colleagues. Well done, because having been through that quite a few times, it's a huge topic that you don't want to get wrong. And it's also very clear when someone doesn't know what they're talking about. And that's where I just go, hands up, right? Okay, you tell me. Let's figure that out. But how okay. So when you gained that experience and now you're able to go into these boardrooms, how are you being able to use that, leverage that, to use that influence in boardrooms in different situations? And then how did you also gain that knowledge? How did you work it so that you were able in that position to gain that knowledge?
So I think, again, you're very different from the agency aspect to actually being within, and particularly a bank, right?
Yeah.
And Sainsbury's Bank was coming out of Lloyd's, so they'd had a degree of obviously the risk and FCA oversight and everything else. But suddenly, a lot of that came from Lloyd's and was
Mhm,
supported by
mhm.
Lloyd's, whereas suddenly they were going to not have that support. And so I was very fortunate in that respect that we were on a journey. And so we had advisors building our risk framework as a standalone agent, Sainsbury's Bank. And
Hmm.
so for me, that was like, being sheep dipped into FCA rules in depth, learning about the three lines of defense. Anybody from financial services will be going, oh gosh, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And how all that operates. So, as a marketing function, sales, whatever, you're very much that first line, and you've got to make sure you're abiding by all the rules, whether it be from a data protection, whether it be from FCA, treating customers fairly, every aspect of all those rules. And then you're monitored by a function sitting behind you, the second line, that are working with you and helping and making sure you're abiding by those. And then the third line is the auditors,
Yeah,
who
yeah.
basically come in to not to say where you're doing well in the nicest possible way. That's not the function. The function is to find where there's gaps
Hmm. Hmm.
and kind of where you're not. So from that perspective, when I took on then once I'd been at Sainsbury's Bank for a while, took on the role of sort of CRM and data management, doing the product marketing strategies essentially. I then was responsible for our risk management in the marketing function. And a lot of that
Right.
was data, and then working with second and third line to are we doing all the right things? So that's where, kind of like suddenly chucked in the deep end,
Yeah, yeah.
learning all of that, but also setting ourselves up because we had a certain degree set up, but not all of it. So we had to almost start afresh, reviewing what we already had and where the gaps were, working with the second and third line and the auditors. And I think I earned the badge by our head of audit, said to me that on one of the audit reviews, they'd never had such a long meeting and so much challenge back on what the auditors were saying
Yeah,
and
yeah.
justification of why I felt that actually that wasn't fair or right or otherwise. And I was like, I'm not sure that's a badge I really want, but okay.
That is nice. So, I can't legally go into too much. And that's not a bad thing. It's for another company here. And when we're going through like things, you can't do that. But I've only been I've been a part of my fair share of that for another financial firm, and they are rigorous, like absolutely rigorous. So that's where when you read that, they were going, as much risk about them. I was like, right, okay, because if you don't, I just had to accept it about, okay, this is what's happening. This is what we've got to amend. Either this content or this user journey, whatever that's going to be. So fair play to you for that, because that's not easy. I'd like to now fast forward a little bit from Sainsbury's to your current role at Ultimate Finance, where you're Chief Marketing Officer. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I think I'm right. Ultimate Finance, you've just had a record-breaking like loan book growth under your leadership, as well as Josh and all the rest of the team there. But so well done. Now, with all growth, personal or professional, it usually takes, I say it takes a village, all the rest of that there. It takes the team and a lot of hard work. Now, what I'd love to know from you and your journey as a leader, when achieving that growth, how have you learned to balance the hitting the objective of what you're trying to do, but also the team morale and the camaraderie to achieve that? Can you discuss how you approach that?
Yeah, yeah. So, our growth has come from, the firstly doing a step back and really looking at the business, and that goes back to 2019 actually, with Josh coming on board as CEO, where we really took a long hard look at the structure of the business, the products, the strategy, to the kind of, if you like, the mission, vision, purpose, all of that, and did quite a lot of resetting, kind of where we wanted to go and what
Hmm.
our
Hmm.
purpose was and how we were going to get there. And that really kicked off in earnest in 2020 when lockdown then happened. But anyway, but that was the foundation. And I think for any business, doesn't matter what size, but if you are, as you say, growing or starting to grow or have the ambition and the capability, if you like, the product and the sales are going to
Mm,
support a kind of real kind of ambitious growth, you need to have done that foundation work, because
mhm, mhm.
otherwise that you start scaling without the controls, without some of those kind of structures in place, and it will just wobble entirely. And that
Yeah.
goes back to my agency days when we grew the agency, making sure that it's controlled,
Mhm,
that
mhm.
you know that what that growth looks like and what you need in place as you reach each kind of like level of the next level of growth and what that's going to take. So from an ultimate finance perspective, when we kind of built that strong foundation and said, right, this is where we're going and how we want to grow, really
Mhm.
our growth, we're delighted that we're meeting that kind of ambition over the last sort of 5 years. Um, but it has been built on a controlled growth, but with a really strong vision, mission, purpose that the whole business behind and understands what we're trying to do and how we're going to scale and kind of on that journey with us. So again, people, culture, really focused, structured, all of that is what's delivered and is delivering for us on that growth.
Excellent. Here, what I'd like you to do just now is, with everything that you know of the peaks, the troughs, the highs, the lows, everything there, I would like you to go back to your first day of your first job and think to yourself, what advice would I give baby Yvonne? You might not give her any. You might say your journey is your journey and enjoy it. This is it. But if there was one thing that you tell yourself, you've got an opportunity to have a conversation with yourself first day, what would you tell her?
Just say yes to opportunity, like don't hesitate, and trust your instincts. There's
Hmm.
definitely been a few times and situations where it's like instinct tells you one thing and you've listened and other people have said, no, no, do this, and actually, so I definitely think from a career and an individual perspective, it's like, there is an element of just sometimes go for it. And if there's an opportunity to, and it feels right, just go for it. So, from a personal level, that very much, would to my younger self. And as you say, you go in different directions and different paths as you go along, but enjoy it. The one thing is to say your long time dead, you spend a lot of hours working. Do what you
Yeah.
enjoy.
It's so funny that you talk about the instincts. From everyone I've spoken to that's either in a high senior leadership role, the instincts have come up a lot at the beginning, and I don't need to go into why that is. And my thoughts are usually it's inexperience talking and just going like, "Oh, maybe is that right thing? I'm not so sure." But the instinct can be or the gut feeling, a really strong indicator of this is right or wrong for you. And listen to that, but also understand why. Why do you feel that way? And going on to the last question here, a careers are rarely linear, right? It's up, up, down, all the rest of that. And at least I know that I've got a lot of people that I need to thank, all the rest of that. I'd love to know, for you, this opportunity here to give thanks, gratitude, positivity to those that have helped you along in your career. So the floor is yours to say thank you to a specific person, a group of people, whoever that may be.
I think, for me, have been some amazing people kind of throughout my career that have really kind of backed me and supported me kind of at some of those key moments. And too many to mention, but I've kind of, individually. So when we did the management buyout going into Sainsbury's, there were people along those ways that opened that door and said, I
Hmm.
think you're good enough. Backing you, even if you don't think you're quite ready for it, take that next step, and I think, for me, there are many people that I've worked with that I think, have supported and have been part of my journey, and many of those people are still friends today, and that's one of the key things for me is you make these long-term friendships through the journey, And if, there's anything of maintaining those friendships and actually paying it forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being there to support them equally, but also looking at the next generation or generations, in my case, a bit older, coming up and supporting them and paying it forward and doing the same thing, being that mentor, being that support and champion for them. And, you're not looking for name checking or anything else, but
Yeah.
it's just part of what you do as supporting them. So, I've met some incredible people throughout my career, and all have helped shape the person and how I operate today. And I've met many that have said, I don't want to be like that.
Okay.
Right?
That's what
That's
I
not
wanted
how
to
I
leave
want
this
to
on a positive
operate.
note. Positive note. We're going positive, positive, Yvonne. But you're the first
Yeah.
person to say that. But you're also the first person to say like about paying it forward in the mentorship. Like generally, I've not heard anyone say that yet, and that is so true. It's so nice, and that's where I mean, I've definitely had a few mentors in my time, and those are the first ones that come to mind. And some of them, they don't even really know that that's what they are aware that that's what they're doing because it comes so naturally to them. Like this is just, that's what they do. That's wonderful. But I also love it. I'm not going to be like that. That's absolutely the avoid that at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Awesome.
it's positive because you can build out and go, if I find myself developing those traits, reverse, go that direction instead.
It's so, I mean, yeah, there's only so much you can say around that, but there's been a few instances where I've bared witness to it, and I can give one example. Because I do think you've touched on something that's actually really really pertinent. And I was watching a manager interact with someone. They didn't know I was watching, which makes me sound really creepy there. But I was overhearing it. Like that gives you the context where I was in a position where I could overhear a conversation that definitely should have been behind closed doors. And that was the first thing where I thought this shouldn't be happening here. This is far too public. It is it's not showing the person, the manager or this other person here in a good light at all. Um, However, I did have some context to the story that was being told here, and I was overhearing going, "Oh no, that's not what happened." Immediately trying to punish this person in a rather public way, and that's not okay. You've clearly not got all the story here, or at least have not got your data here, and it sounds like you haven't gone to this person here yet either to get the full context, and instead you've kind of reached your cup is full, and you've decided to take this out publicly. And I thought to myself, this is at least 10, 11 years ago now. Uh, Never ever do that. Personally, I'm like, okay, praise publicly, but if there's something going on there. But the fact they did it so public, I thought I will never, like, I didn't do that anyway, but it was the atmosphere it created, the environment, and my perception of that person as well completely changed that day, where I was like, oh no, if you're willing to do that to them, then I can't really trust you and it changed it, and I thought, okay, never be like that. To end on a more positive note, there's been lots of others where I say, yes, that is absolutely who I want to be. The mentorship, absolutely, that's where I want to take. I take a lot of them energy from those who are able to say maybe the uncomfortable thing, but in the right situation where I go, everyone here needed to hear that, and it needed to come from you, the person who's got that influence, and how do you command that? I go, brilliant. How do
Yeah.
how do
And
I
it's about
become that?
it's the people trust, and it's, treating people as people, the way you want to be treated. And sometimes, it's a difficult message, but whatever it is, do it in a humane way, and think about how you would want to receive that and in the environment. I think that's super important.
It's abs- uh, absolutely. We could get into like, but yeah, the treat how you want to be treated, all the rest of that. I love that. Well, here, thank you so much, Yvonne, for your time. You've been so generous with it. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone once again for giving your ears, your eyes to the Think Bamboo podcast. I'm truly grateful for it. And with that, I will see you again soon, Yvonne. Thank you very much for your
Thanks very
time.
much. Thank you.